Oh, the slide is not working. Yeah, there we go. So my name is Ali Mullah Hosseini. I'm the technical writer here at SpecFlow, and I've got with me Jordan Western, our user journey engineer at SpecFlow. Yeah, this is a hands-on session, so be ready to follow Jordan and learn new tips and tricks about SpecFlow. So this is hands-on session. As I said, please use the Q&A tool in Zoom for questions. If you see a question that's also your question, please upload it. When questions are relevant to the current task that Jordan is doing, I'll try to stop him and ask him to answer it. Otherwise, we will answer all the questions at the end as we have a dedicated Q&A session. So no worries if we don't answer your questions while the presentation is still going on. I'll launch the first poll. This is just a quick one just to get to know you guys, see how many of you guys have you used SpecFlow before, or are you really new to this?
Cool, looks like a bit of 50-50.
Yeah, I thought there'll be more. Yes, but that's okay.
I mean, this is perfect webinar then, right?
Yeah, no. Exactly. Cool. Yeah, I'll just end the poll. This is just, yeah, it's let me just share the results with everyone. We're sitting at 54% that are new to SpecFlow. Oh no, sorry, they've used SpecFlow before, and 46% that have not used SpecFlow before, but there is something in here for everyone. So I'm gonna stop sharing and hand it over to Jordan.
Let me share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead, mate.
Let me know when it's visible.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, cool. So I think first things first is, because this is intended for you guys to follow along, if you'd like to, let me know if or let Ali know if I'm going too fast, and he can shout at me essentially. So let's begin. So the first thing we need to do, if you want to get started with SpecFlow, is to install our SpecFlow extension. We have an extension for Visual Studio, and we have also one for Rider if that's your preference. So either or. So we first need to launch Visual Studio. And for now, we won't set up any new project. We just need to add the extension. So we'll continue without code for a second. And at the top of your IDE, you should have this extensions setting. So if you give that a click, you can go to Manage Extensions. Sorry, I know this is a bit sluggish. And you can basically just search for SpecFlow, and it should come up with this one here, the SpecFlow for Visual Studio 2019. We'll click download because we'll need to close Visual Studio while the VSIX installer just does its thing. Can take some time, hopefully not too long. And again, do let me know if this is too fast for you and you're trying to follow along.
Yep, so just to let everyone know, we are recording this session and it will be on our YouTube channel, I think sometime this Friday. So if you miss out or you want to recommend your friends to check it out, make sure you do that. You can find it on our YouTube channel, which I will share the link at the end of this webinar.
There's also a follow-up email, right? I think to all registries.
Yep, that will go out as well.
Cool. So it looks like this has been installed. So we can now just close that, relaunch Visual Studio, and that should be fine, and we can get started. Cool. Okay. So first things first, we actually need something to test. So we need to create a project for that. So let's click Create a New Project. And this one's going to be a class library for the sake of simplicity. She is slow.
So what's the project you're building, Jordan?
Yeah, so this is going to be the project or our subject that we're going to test. So we need to create some functionality, right, to actually test in the first instance. So this is what that will be. So cool. Let's click Next on Class Library. And in this instance, we're going to call it SpecFlow Calculator. So you can name it as such or name it whatever you like, and just click next. And then we're going to choose, in this case, .NET Core 3.1. But there is obviously other things in this drop down here that you can choose if you have some need for your particular project. So let's click create, and we should see the IDE launch with our project. Maybe you can sing us a song, Ali, whilst we wait.
I'm not sure, but I think people are going. I think people are going to drop rapidly. So let's not do that.
Okay, so this is our default project. Oh, someone's raised their hand. Ali, if you could just check that out.
Yeah, I'll have a chat with them on the side.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, no worries. So we've got our default project. This is how it looks in the Solution Explorer. So by default, we always get this kind of standard class 1, which we can rename. So we'll do that now. And we're going to rename it to calculator. Oh, if I can spell it right. And if you hit enter there, it should also rename the class for you. This is what this message is here. So basically renaming every element that uses that class name. Cool, perfect. And because people are following along, I'll type this out instead of copying and paste it, just to give you guys a chance to catch up. So we've got our calculator, and our calculator needs to do something. So we're going to add 2 numbers effectively. So we need to create some properties to store those numbers in. And if you didn't see what I did there, the keyword for, or shorthand for property is prop, and then you can tab twice and it creates the property. And we need an integer, which is fine. And we'll call this first number. And then we'll create a second property. And we'll call this second. Get this right. Second number. And we also need to act on these things. So let's create.
Jordan, can you zoom in?
Oh,
please?
sure. Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Cool. So we've got our 2 properties. We now need a method that adds those numbers. So we'll simply just call this add. And it's going to return nothing. Sorry, it's not going to return nothing. It's going to return an int, of course, because we're returning the sum of 2 numbers. And we'll simply leave this for now. And we will, if we call this method, we will throw this exception here, just so we know to go back and tidy up later. So that's fine. Let's just quickly do a build to make sure that everything's looking good. And there's not much in here, so hopefully it's all fine.
Yeah, Jordan, while that happens, I think the question was around, is it different for a .NET Framework project? I think this came up when you were actually creating the project. And I think the setup would be the same, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the setup would be the same. You'd obviously just choose which options you'd like to select from the Visual Studio window before you create the project template. So yeah, it should be exactly the same.
Yeah, can I just ask everyone kindly to put your questions into the Q&A, because in the chat, I'm going to lose track of them. Thank you.
That would be good. Thanks, Ali. Cool. So this is built just fine. I'm just going to get rid of this white space so we can move on. Cool. So we've got our subject to test. We now actually need to create our test project. So what we can do is open the Solution Explorer window on the right-hand side. And if we right-click on the solution itself, we can come down to this add menu here and then new project. So because we have the extension installed, we get the luxuries of this project template, which is by us, by SpecFlow. So if we give this a click and click next, and we're going to call this SpecFlow Calculator Specs. You can call it SpecFlow Calculator Tests, whatever suits your needs. We'll click create. We should get another window here. I'm going to keep this .NET Core 3.1, but again, you can choose whichever framework is most relevant to you in your project if one exists already. And also the test framework, we're going to be using the runner, of course, but you know, if your preference is XUnit or NUnit, then feel free to choose whatever you feel like. And also this is nice, we get this little tick box here. So we automatically add the reference to the Fluent Assertions library. And what that is effectively is a nice way to do assertions. It's nice and readable, and you'll see that a bit later on. So we'll click create, and that gives us our new project. And again, this gives us a bunch of kind of boilerplate default template stuff, if you like. So we've got a feature in here, we've got a step definition in here, so that's fine. Cool. So the next thing we need to do, we need to actually have access to this calculator from our test project. So if we right click again on our specs project, we can add a project reference, and you can see here your other project should appear, whatever you've named it. We can just click OK, and we should be good. So I'm just going to build this again. Just make sure everything's happy within the IDE you're using.
Yeah, just a little side note, if you launch the writer, this would be pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's pretty intuitive between the two.
Yeah, it's fairly similar. So you could follow along with the writer as well if you don't want to use Visual Studio.
Yeah, sure. Cool. So we've got a successful build, so that's good. And what that should mean is in our Test Explorer window, so if you don't have that, I'll just show you how you can get that. So at the top here, there's this test tab, and you can click this Test Explorer option here, and you should see the Test Explorer window kind of appear on your IDE, and then you can dock it somewhere if you like. So now that we've built, we should see some tests here, which should just show the kind of default test here. And we do, we've got this SpecFlow calculator specs, and then we've got our add two numbers test here. So let's go and have a look at that. So let's go back to the Solution Explorer, and we'll just double click on this calculator feature. And then this is our first look at the feature. So I'll just explain about what this is. So the feature title, this will be whatever is relevant to your particular feature. Obviously very important. So you can see and navigate through the Solution Explorer to see which feature you're interested in. And then you have these URLs here. We'll come on to these a bit later on when we talk about the documentation. And also, so this is our first scenario effectively. So what is a scenario? So it's a business requirement at its fundamental level, and a feature file is for you to, or a way to document your business requirements in kind of plain English. And that way it makes it much more readable. You know, you can clearly see what the requirements of your application should be without having, excuse me, to just look at code. This just gives us a readable way of looking at it, which is nice. Cool. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to execute this test. So let's give it a quick run.
Just a little side note here. You can't do this in the feature files. You can write them in other languages if you wish to. We do support them. Just I'll link the documentation later on in the chat, and you can all check it out there. But from top of my head, I remember do Spanish, Deutsch, I think Dutch, Hungarian as well. And,
I think there's a lot, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a fair few of them. These are the ones I remember. But yeah, you can explore that. And, you know, if you want to write feature files and your requirements in a different language, yeah, totally acceptable.
Yeah, cool. So let me just run this again because I was expecting a different output. So you can see in the test window, it's executing here. Okay, fine. There's nothing here. That's fine. Let's move on. So basically, what we need to do now is, so for each of these keywords, so this given and when then, this is, I guess, common Gherkin language. So you may have seen it before, you may have not. But effectively, each of these lines or these keywords, they perform a particular action, right? They're linked to some executable code somewhere to perform your test action. So you can navigate to the particular binding, it's called. So the method that this links to or relates to. So you can right click on the keyword. And if you go to definition, you can also do this a bit faster by just clicking F12 once you've hovered over it or clicked over it. So we'll do that now. I'm just going to hit F12. And you can see here that it takes us to this file here. So this is called a step definition. And I guess this is where all the logic for your particular steps is stored. You can have many files. It doesn't matter. So basically what we're looking at here is this given, and you can see this piece of text, which is a regular expression. And this is what we use to, I guess, match the method to the particular step. So if we quickly flick back here, you can see the words are given. The first number is 50. And then our step definition, you can see the same is reflected. And we actually have this matching pattern here, which we use as a parameter effectively for our method. So that's good. Oh, I've just realized we've missed a step. So the reason it didn't report anything into the Test Explorer window, and sorry to sidetrack, is we have with the runner, you need to actually activate the runner to use it.
Yeah.
So you basically just need to do registration, and you can see that from the output window. And if you go to the show output from, you go to tests, and you can see the test output here. And the runner is telling us, please sign up for your free account. So that's what we need to do. So you can hold control, and then you can click this link. So this will take us to this registration page. We only support Microsoft accounts at the moment. That could change in the future, but just simply click sign in. And I've already signed in before, so I can use this account here. Cool. If you're new, you'll see some kind of pages in between, which will just ask for a few details. So that might be different for your use case. But yeah, effectively, once you filled that out, you'll come to this screen where you can see it's successfully activated, and you can basically switch back to the IDE now and basically continue the execution. So let's do that now.
Yeah, just a little note on this. So if you picked a different runner, you wouldn't have to do any of this, and it's totally fine. It's this is just the runner that we have, the SpecFlow runner, but you're not tied to this. You can use SpecFlow with XUnit and Unit and MS Test, the more popular ones. And there is no credit card or anything. This is 100% free, the runner. All we ask you is just an email. That's it. And then first name and the last name. So.
Cool, thanks, Ali. So now we're able to execute. This is what I was looking for earlier. So apologies for that. But effectively what we see now is this particular test is pending. And we can identify that through kind of this trace here. So you can see we've called the given method. And in the output, we've said this is pending. And the same for the others. And you can see the next execution lines have skipped because of these previous errors. So what we need to do now is actually, I guess, do an implementation, right? We need to come up with an implementation for this. So let's go to our step definition, and let's get rid of this boilerplate stuff here because we don't need it. So we have an object or a subject under test. So we need to obviously create a reference to this or create an object of this, which is our calculator, of course, and we'll just call it calculator. And we'll create a new instance of this. Cool. And now we can interact with this guy. So yeah, the first thing we need to do is assign our first number from our calculator. So let me just quickly add an underscore here so we're not getting confused. Cool. So we'll reference our calculator. And if you remember rightly, we had two properties, one first name, one first number and one second number. So given that this first number, we need to assign this to something. So let's assign it to the number we're passing in from the step definition, basically. Cool. So just to recap, we're passing in this value here from our feature file into our step definition as an integer. And we're effectively just assigning the property of first number in calculator to the number that we're passing in. So let's give this another run.
Jordan,
yep.
Do you know if it's possible to change the runner from the solution window? So if they picked SpecFlow runner, can they change it at this stage?
You would have to remove all of the, I guess, project NuGet packages for the runner and add like NUnit or.
Okay. So I guess just starting a new project is easier.
Yeah, if it's a new project, definitely. If it's an existing project, you would have to, I guess, uninstall all of the packages that pertain to that particular runner. Yeah, and then reinstall them. So. And
another question was that what we're looking at, is this a template, and is the SpecFlow having AI intelligence to output this format? So.
Yes, it is a template, and no, there's no intelligence here. So this is, if I understand the question correctly, this is all just template stuff that you get from the extension. So when you create a new project, these files are automatically added in, so you can get some idea, right? So you can see a feature file, you can see a step definition, etc., and then you can delete them or add to them or whatever as you need to. Cool. So thanks. I hope that answers your question, and if it didn't, then please say so. Cool. So I'm just gonna run these again. And what I'm interested in is
so we just
output.
wrote the method for the first step, right? The given step.
Correct. Yeah. So this given here, we've effectively just we've created some functionality behind it. So if we F12 or right click and go to definition, we can see the implementation now. It takes us directly to it because it matches it based on this regular expression. So we will actually be adding an unbound step later. So it might help your understanding of how this is working.
Yep.
But yeah, for now, this has already been bound because of the template. That's all. So we'll get into that in a bit. Cool. So you can now see in the output window from the test result, we can see that this step is actually completed now. But the rest are still pending, and therefore anything after that is then skipped after this pending step. So we also need to complete the implementation for our next step, which is and the second number is 70. So we need to do something for this. And again, we can just F12 and it will take us to anything that's bound. So just to, I guess, touch on the and keyword. So the and keyword is just it's a way of basically making your steps more readable. It actually basically inherits the keyword that precedes it. So in this case, we've got a given before it. So therefore, this and behind the scenes is treated as a given. If it was after a when, it would be treated as a when. It's kind of irrelevant for now, but I was just letting you know. So again, we'll F12 into this step, and you can see this template code again. So we'll get rid of this. And much like in the first instance where we assigned the first number, we will assign the second number. So let's get a reference to our calculator again and our second number property. And then again, we're taking in the number as a parameter into this method. So we'll simply just assign number again to second number. So we've got our two numbers, but we now need to do something, right? We need to act upon these things. So this is what happens in our when step. Our given step sets up the test, and then we need to do something in our when step. Okay. So I want to be able to store the results of this calculation. So I'm going to create a private field, and I'm going to call it underscore results. And I'm not going to assign anything to it for now because that is the job of the calculator. So we need a reference again to our calculator. Oh, in fact, results is equal to underscore calculator dot, and then we had the method, right, which was our add method. So effectively, we're assigning the value of result from the return of this add method here. So cool. So let's give this a quick build. Check that everything is still okay. Good. And then one more thing is the then step. So this still doesn't do anything. So let's F12 into this step here, and let's create some functionality for this. So obviously being a then step, I say it's obvious. It's probably not obvious to people that are new. So then step is where we do our assertion. So you shouldn't really do anything else in here. That's for the other steps. So it's nice to see only assertions in here. Or ideally, that's how you should keep to it. So we'll get a reference to our result field, which we've assigned the result to. And then there's this should method here, which is from the Fluent Assertions library. So we need to just add a reference to this. There's a project reference, but there's not one in this particular class file. So if you just right click on your squiggly, quick actions and refactorings, it should just suggest that we add a reference to Fluent Assertions. And that's happy and it's resolved. And now you can start to see what I was talking about earlier, where the Fluent library really just makes it really clear as to what we're expecting to see. So we obviously expect it to be the same as our result. So this makes it nice and readable. So our result should be equal to the result that we pass in, basically, as this parameter. Cool. So I'm going to do another build, make sure we're happy. And that's all good. So I'm going to re-execute. We'll see what happens this time.
So now you implemented all the steps?
Yeah, so everything's buttoned up. Each one of these steps has an implementation now.
Okay.
Yeah, I could make this a bit clearer when we get a bit further into the webinar. So let's see the result. So it's failed. Interesting. Why has it failed? So we can look at this output message here. It said the method of operation is not implemented. Okay, well, what method are we talking about here? So we're going to have a look at this stack trace here. Oh, okay, so it's our calculator.add method. So you can either get to it from the Solution Explorer window, your calculator class, or you can just click it here and it should open the file for you. So that's what we will do. Cool. And obviously we're throwing this not implemented exception from this method. So we actually need to create some implementation here, right? So let's do that. So simply we're going to return the result of adding these two numbers together, right? So we'll say return first number plus second number. Cool. And that obviously then returns us the result. So I'm going to execute this and we should see success this time, which would be nice. Is there any questions, Ali, as well as this?
Yeah, so there is one around what is the best practice to write BDD, which I guess they're talking about feature files.
Yeah.
Is it first writing the failed test cases and then implement the business logic, or the other way around?
So effectively, I guess the way it's meant to be used in true BDD is that these things would be written before any implementation happens, right? So I think there's this common mindset where people think that the scenarios themselves are tests. That's not true. First things first, they are business requirements and they should be documented as such and clearly as such. Yeah. So these would usually come first. It doesn't always happen in the real world. I would say if you want guidance on how to write on good Gherkin or good feature files, then there's lots and lots of educational content on specflow.org. And if you want to, sorry, not Andy, Ali, if you want to maybe post that in the chat so people can have a look at
I'll give him the link right now.
That would be cool.
Yep.
Because really, to be quite frank, writing features can be very subjective. People do it different ways. There is some guidelines on how to write good Gherkin, but it's just subjective. So it kind of really whatever's going to provide you the most value in your team. So
yeah, absolutely. So to do that, we are in contact with the two people that a group of people who've actually been behind behavior-driven development from the start of it. And from its infancy, and they actually contribute to our website. They have a blog series on our website. You can go read the content there, and they hold webinars with us. So if you really want to get into writing good feature files, business logic and requirements, keep an eye on our website, and we'll be in touch with you guys to invite you to the latest webinars around those subjects.
Mm-hmm. And if you're if you learn from videos, then you can go to the YouTube channel too. There's plenty of good stuff on there. Cool. So we can see that it passed. Hooray. Congratulations. You've just written your first automated test using SpecFlow. Hopefully others have been following along and have done the same. So we can see that everything's buttoned up nicely here now. The output looks fine and we get a positive result. So that's good. So the next thing is, it's all well and good having one scenario, but let's create another scenario, maybe where some of the steps aren't automatically bound from the template, just to show you guys what that looks like. So I will copy and paste this in here. You don't have to follow along with this, but you can do on this particular section. Maybe you can do it as homework. All of this, by the way, this introduction stuff is on specflow.org, so you can follow through in your own time if you don't feel like this is the best medium for you. So we're adding two numbers, and now we're going to subtract two numbers. So this is what an unbound step looks like, or a step that has no implementation would probably be a clearer way of saying it. So if I zoom in a bit, you can see this is purple. I know it's subtle, but it is purple, and the rest are black. And that denotes that these have implementation and this one does not. So the good thing about the extension is if we again hit F12 on this, it recognizes that there's nothing matching this. And it gives us the opportunity to copy this to the clipboard, like a skeleton piece of code to the clipboard. So this is saying no matching step binding found. Do you want to copy the step binding skeleton to the clipboard? Yes, we do, because it's faster and it would save you having to, write that stuff out yourself. So we'll go to our step definition, and this is personal preference, but because this is a when step, I keep this within the group of when steps. Just makes it easier for navigation. And now effectively we have we have our method, so or our step definition binding. So we obviously need some implementation here. So what we'll do is our calculator currently doesn't do any subtracting. So let's add this. Again, we'll make it a public int, and we'll call this subtract. And much like we did in the addition, it's just going to be simple logic to return the value, first number minus second number. And just like that, we have a method that we can use. So I've just realized there's a typo in there, but don't worry about that. Cool. So we have the implementation, and now we can consume it. So again, we will do result equals calculator, underscore calculator dot, and then we see all of our properties and our methods, and now we should see the subtract method. So we'll double click this, and just like that, everything should work. So if we go back to our feature, we can see this is now black, no longer purple. So that's good news for us. And luckily, because the functionality is translatable to this scenario, we don't need to do anything for these, right? They already do what we want them to do. So this is good, and I've just noticed, oh no, this is fine. Right? I was just questioning the numbers, but they are fine, so that's good. Cool. So we'll do a quick build. We'll just check that everything works. Any more questions?
Yeah, we got a couple. Is it possible to run tests in parallel on class level using SpecRun, the SpecFlow runner?
Sorry,
is it possible to run tests in parallel?
Mm-hmm.
In parallel on class level using SpecFlow runner? What I mean is run scenarios one by one and features in parallel.
Yes. Yeah. So the runner supports parallel execution. We don't have it here. Maybe we can touch on it afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but basically you can configure the runner to have a number of threads, and each say if you had 10 tests and you suggested 10 threads, then 10 tests would run simultaneously. Wouldn't recommend doing that on your local machine, but obviously if you're running via Azure or whatever, then this can be beneficial for execution times.
Yeah. Cool.
So moving back on, we now see our second test, and let's execute everything to make sure we're good. And hopefully we see a positive results. Is there any other questions just while we wait, mate? Or are we up to speed?
Yeah, one more. Is it compatible with the MOQ.NET mocking library? Is this compatible with? Yeah, I don't know what this is.
Okay, so I think the mock library, so I guess it doesn't really matter. In terms of your code implementation, it doesn't matter, right? You can do anything in your code. If you want to use other libraries or use other classes, that kind of doesn't matter. SpecFlow just gives you a way of, having clear requirements and then binding those things to code. So anything in the code, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do and make it work for you.
Yeah, SpecFlow is not going to stop you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a very flexible framework, right? That you can kind of, its purpose is to just really clearly document requirements. There is also a bunch of other good stuff, but that's not for today. So
yep.
We have a good result here. So effectively, this part of the webinar is done. So we have our tests, but sometimes people like business analysts, product owners, they might not necessarily have the technical understanding or skills to come to an IDE and open a project or clone a project from source control. So this is a problem because now we have business requirements that effectively aren't visible really to the business. So we have a solution for this, and it's called the SpecFlow Living Documentation or Living Doc. So I'll now show you how this works, and then we can cover what these links are for. So cool. First of all, we need to install it. So we can do this from the command line. And it's probably just worth mentioning that we also have an Azure DevOps plugin that does this if you don't want to do it locally or integrate it within your release pipeline. So I'll paste this into the chat.
I'll also link the documentation here that's relevant to how to install this, both the Azure DevOps extension and also the command line generator. So
Thanks. So I've just pasted it in the chat, which is the command to install the Living Doc tool from the CLI. So we'll just run this, so I have access. And there's lots it can do. So I'll talk about kind of the different parameters and stuff maybe if we get time at the end. But the tool's now installed. You can see this was a success. So now we can carry on. So what the Living documentation needs is access to our project. So if we navigate to the Solution Explorer and we find where the repo is stored, hopefully here, source, repos, SpecFlow calc, cool. And then obviously it needs to be the project that your tests are in. So in this case, it's SpecFlow calculator.specs. We'll go to the output folder, the build output folder. And the one we need to find is the project DLL. So let's have a look here. Where are you? Here it is. Cool. So we've got SpecFlow calculate.specs. And if you shift click this, it should come up with this option to copy as path. So that's what we'll do. So to invoke the Living Doc CLI tool, you need this Living Doc keyword followed by the test assembly. So test-assembly, and then the path to the test assembly. So you can run this just like this, but we want to go one further and we want our test results to also be visible in the Living Doc. So we'll have another parameter here, which is -t. And again, you can read all about this in the documentation. And we have this test execution.json file. So we need this. So we'll copy as path again, and we'll pass this in. And if we hit enter, we should hopefully see that nothing goes wrong. Cool. So in the project root folder, we now have this this livingdoc.html. So let's go and have a look at that. Oh, sorry, I think it's under the, oh, it's under the root folder. Cool. So let's open this and have a look. So basically what this is, it's just generates a HTML file with your tests and results, should you wish to see them. And this is really nice because you can build this kind of thing in your, your CI/CD pipelines, and then, host it somewhere where business analysts, product owners can view it. So we can drill down into this so we can see the test results here. Oh, one other thing I forgot to do is the image. So you can embed images and links into this. So I just want to fix this quickly so you can see it.
Yeah, maybe it's a good time to tell us what this block is here.
Yes, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So effectively what this is, in between your feature title and your first scenario, you have the opportunity to write some text. So it's actually Markdown. So it uses Markdown syntax. Right. And you can add links to images. You can use other Markdown syntax basically to do things like make things bold, add links, things like this. So super useful. If you want to link off to some, I don't know, project that's hosted somewhere in GitHub or something like this, right? So yeah, it's just extra information to make the feature more understandable for the people that are consuming it.
Yeah, something to add here is that something that's a lot of people use this block for, and is actually linking this to a product backlog item. So you write your test cases and you want this to be relevant to an item that the developers are working for. You can put the link here between the feature and the scenario, and as a tag. And that tag, you can define it when you generate it in the CLI tool. I will put the documentation on how to write that tag so it actually reads it. And then once the documentation, the Living Doc is generated, you can click on it, and whoever opens it can see that link there and then clicks on it and goes straight to your whatever if you use Jira, Azure, whatever is your platform of choice, it will go directly there. So that's something that a lot of people use because it kind of bridges the gap between the testing scenarios that are written here and the actual work item.
So that's at both feature and scenario levels. So you can have each scenario linked to a particular, maybe a test case in Azure that links to this particular this requirement. So that's super cool. Cool. So I've just built this, and then obviously you need to regenerate the documentation. So I'll do that now, and then I can just quickly refresh this, and we should see an image, hopefully. Yay, cool. So as you can see, this really could be anything you want it to be. Obviously, we've chosen a calculator because it makes sense for us. But yeah, this is, I guess, just the power of having the markdown here and being able to, I guess, dress up your living documentation. So as Ali pertained to, there's some links here. So for example, there's this link here, learn how to read more about living documentation. And in the template, it takes us to the SpecFlow docs. Let me close these off. Crumbs, hang on 2 seconds. Cool. So it gives you the folder structure basically from the project, and all of your tests can be visible here, and the results will be visible too. There's a little toggle here. You can just toggle off the test results. Maybe it's more clear without them, or whatever your use case might be, but it's there if you should need it. If you've got a huge suite of tests, you can also filter by tags or steps or names, whatever really you need to do. So all of this stuff is just to enable non-technical people really to view the business requirements. So that's super cool. So
yeah, something to add here, Jordan, before you move on. If you open the CLI tool for me, please. The command line. So if you don't include the -T, so your test results, you can generate living doc without test results. It will not have that toggle. It will be without that toggle that Jordan just showed us. And this is something you would do if you're sending these externally. So you're halfway through your project, you want to show this to a manager, and you don't want them to freak out if they see all the red failed tests because you haven't implemented them yet. So something handy to do, and a use case that we've heard a lot of users tell us is that they just don't put the test results there because the person who's viewing this living doc is not aware that they're working on the failed tests and there's nothing wrong, and the red might put some people off. So that's an option.
Scary, right?
Yeah, it can be. But it's in a big project, is a lot of reds in there, so that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, sure, cool. Thanks, dude. Cool. So what I was going to talk about next is the analytics tab. So not only do you get all of the test results here, but you kind of get a more focused analytics about the test results at feature level, at scenario level, and at step level, in fact. So this is useful. Something useful here as well is the unused step definition. So I think we've got a couple of minutes here. So what I'll do is just create something in here. Let me just copy this. And so you can really see what's happening. Big projects over time, people don't necessarily tidy things up. Hopefully that isn't the case, but it does happen. So I'm just going to give this a quick build, and then I'll regenerate the docs. And effectively what you will see is a reference to that particular unused step definition. So if we go back to analytics, you can see here now there's now one, and we can see which one that is. So you can go and delete those and tidy up your project, which is super nice. So that's it from the presentation side, Ali.
Awesome. Pretty good. We had a couple of questions. I've got one in chat here. Let me just scroll and find it. Oh yeah. How to share data in multiple scenarios in a feature file, like table data. So I think that's the parameter thing in feature files.
Yeah. So was it sharing it between?
How to share data in multiple scenarios in feature file.
Yeah, so you can pass it in, right? You can have a table, a data table. You can have an examples table. Let's add one.
Yeah.
For example, this isn't a data table, mind you. This is an examples table, so let's not do that. But I don't know. Let's maybe grab up the docs.
Yep.
But yeah, effectively, yes, you can, much like I've created the local field for the result, you can save a local reference to the table that gets passed in. And yeah, you can then do with it however you wish. There is other ways to get data. We have another plugin called SpecFlow.external data, I believe. Yeah. And this is another way you can read data out of Excel files or CSV files, I think it is. So this is another way you can. This is another way you can manage data. So
external data plugin. Yeah, right there. Guides.
Yeah, cool. I'm just going to find an example of tables quickly. It was there. Crumbs. But basically, it looks like this. Like given something, and then you have this table, and then it actually gets passed into the as a table object that you can then basically do stuff with. And then, like I say, as we've done with our result, you can just have a, like a private table, for example. We call it table, and then you can just assign to this, right? So if you pass it in, you can assign it if you need to share it between steps. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. Let me know if it doesn't.
Cool. Oscar wants to know if it's possible to use templates for this HTML, which I'm guessing is referring to Living Doc. So we can create as a company logo. As you just saw, we added the calculator image. So if you want to add images to this Living Doc to put your company logo, you can do that easily. Just chuck the link in the feed between the feature and the scenario, and it will show up on every Living Doc. So that's quite easy.
I think there's good docs inside of our SpecFlow.org that shows you what you can and can't do with Markdown and stuff. So I'd recommend having a look.
I've linked it in there. Another one is that this is an easy one: how to generate Living Doc when tests are running from Azure DevOps.
Yeah, cool. So effectively, you can do it via the CLI if you want to, which is this command line here. But we actually do have an Azure DevOps plugin, which you can add to your particular release pipeline or build pipeline that will do this for you.
Yeah, I will link that in the chat. And the good thing about that is that it's fully integrated into Azure. You can view your Living Doc in there. And if you pick your source from feature files, you can actually edit your feature files directly from there as well. So it's quite handy. You just add it as a build step, and you run it in your pipeline, and you have everything in there. So if you work in the Azure with Azure, this would be, I guess that I would recommend you to use that, because it would be a lot easier to share it with others. But
I think just to add to that, if you also have, if your feature files are hosted on Azure, for example, then you can also edit the feature files through the extension in Azure DevOps, which is also pretty cool for people that aren't necessarily technical and don't have access to the IDE. So cool. I hope that answers your question.
Yep. Okay. So what if we want to read this input from an external file? Okay. So I think this came up when you were actually adding in the Living Doc. What is the best way to do that with SpecFlow?
So I think this read this input from So I think the external data plugin. Let me just quickly search it. Oh, if I can spell external data. Yeah. So basically, this is a plugin you can use, and you can read from Excel files or CSV files. So you can read all of your, I guess, test data in from there. Instead of passing them in from your particular feature or step definition as such. So again, hopefully there's a link in the chat. I can just paste this in. If not,
yeah.
Cool.
So last one, can we do parameterized input in single feature definition, or do we need to write only one set of inputs in one feature definition?
Can we do parameterized input in a single feature definition? Yes, we need to write only one set of inputs. So I think, if I understand the question correctly, so for example, if you have, I need a capital O. If you have a scenario outline, you can have, for example, this examples table, I'll call it. I'm not sure if that's confusing, but let's say numbers, and then you can have number, and then you can have a bunch of numbers, or let's say, in fact, for simplicity, let's call this number 1 and number 2, and then we can just say, I don't know, 50, another pipe, and then 70 in this case to mimic our existing stuff. Oh, and you could also have result, right? So you can have result, on potato fingers, 120. And then you could basically duplicate this. So you could have, whatever, change the numbers, and then you basically just parameterize this. So you have number 1 like this, and likewise number 2. Obviously, they need to be capitals like they are here. then you can have result. And basically what this will do, let me just change these so it will compile, and you can see what that looks like. Cool. So let me just build this quickly. And you should then see that we've kind of parameterized this from a table, and each set of numbers will have its own test. So you can see here, if I just expand this, so you've got this variant 0, variant 1, and variant 2. So yeah, that's, I guess, a way you could, if that was your question, I'm not sure, but if I failed to answer it, then do let me know. But I think that's what you were talking about. Yeah,
that's what I understood from it as well. So I don't know if we can answer this one, but it's a user is complaining about the rider extension on Mac, that after they run the test and it fails, all the feature files disappear. So
okay, we've seen I think I've seen this in the support forum.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it's the same person, but I guess very difficult to answer now.
Yeah.
If it isn't the same person, then maybe it's a common issue and we need to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take note of this and bring it up in the team, and we'll fire up a Mac somewhere.
But the conversation's still ongoing with the person I was speaking to before. So if we find an answer, then
yeah, we'll get in touch. Awesome. Yeah. All right, we still got 8 minutes. How to execute feature files in parallel, not scenarios, in SpecFlow Plus NUnit project.
So I think NUnit parallelization. I know it's a bit of a long word. I think it does it at feature level by default. If you set there's an attribute you set for parallelization. I think it will do it by feature out of the box. I'm not sure if NUnit will do class level parallelization, but SpecFlow Plus definitely does, obviously.
Yeah, I've got a note here. You were going to show us quickly how to do parallelization in here.
Oh yeah, for SpecFlow Plus. Yeah, for SpecFlow Plus. So I mean, I guess we're not going to have time to go into the details of NUnit. Do we have documentation on parallelization?
Yes, I will paste it in. You can.
Okay, cool. Yep. Then have a look at that. But what I'll do is I'll quickly show you. So it's SR profile, so this SpecFlow Plus runner profile. So if you find this, I would recommend calling it default SR profile because it picks up the name default by default. If not, if you change it, you have to specify it in another file. But for simplicity, I'll just call it this. Cool. And then you can see here, you've got these execution settings. So test thread count. And you can set that to whatever you like, but do be aware that if you set it to something like 10, then, if you're doing UI testing, for example, and you're using Selenium, you'll see 10 browsers appear and it's a nightmare. But yeah, you can basically configure all of that stuff from this file and more. So I hope the docs at least answer the NUnit question, but this should answer the SpecFlow Plus runner question. Cool.
Yeah, this one what I just pasted in is for SpecFlow Plus runner. I think the NUnit stuff you probably have to look at the NUnit.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty common, so you can definitely Google that and see results immediately. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Cool. All right. So if we don't have any more questions, but there is one question in the chat regarding. Can you briefly talk about context injection? I don't think it's something you can talk about briefly. How it implements and dependency injection.
Yeah, so I mean, there's the BODI NuGet package which handles that. I'm not sure if it handles it by default anymore, but yeah, basically you use it the same in the same way you would use any kind of container and injection. So for example, this is a good example actually. So out of the box, the scenario context object is injected, or you could obviously set it through the constructor, and this will automatically resolve without you having to do anything funky or fancy in your project. Obviously, you can extend that. I think we also have support for other dependency injection frameworks. I've not used them personally, but again, this will be all in the documentation, so I'd recommend having a good look through that. But yeah, I mean, it works the same as any other kind of dependency injection framework. So.
Yep, I will paste the documentation homepage as well. There's a handy search tool in there. If the moment you type it in, it's gonna, you will find all the information that you need. I think that's about it, right? 4 minutes left. There's no more questions. I will now share my screen if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I don't need to stop, do I?
Yeah, you just stop sharing.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. All right. So thanks for joining in. Thank you for your time today, everyone. That's the link to our YouTube channel, and that's our community forum. We are an open source project, and if you go and ask for new features and upload the existing ones, we'll be really glad, because we want to develop things that are valuable to our community. So please head there to the community forum. You will find other users that have had, similar issues as you or similar ideas as you, so you can get a lot of inspiration from there. That's our YouTube channel. We will have this webinar uploaded by Friday. And if I can get this, and yeah, that's our website, our Twitter account, and our LinkedIn page. You will get a follow-up email, and more of all of these are going to be included in there if you miss them out here. So thanks again. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you in the next one.